The galaxy had known war for millennia, but never like this. For centuries, the Zarketh Dominion held the crown of conquest. They burned worlds into silence, crushed rebellions with a flick of their metallic claws, and wiped out entire species in the name of order. Other alien civilizations either knelt or vanished. War wasn't just their tool, it was their culture, their identity. They believed no race could match their precision, brutality, or technological superiority. Then came humans. At first, they were dismissed. Primitive, fragile, divided. The Zarketh didn't see a threat in a planet that had only recently begun to reach beyond its own moon. They labeled Earth unfit for integration, which was the Dominion's polite way of saying, ready to be conquered. The invasion was scheduled, routine. It wasn't even considered a high-priority operation. And yet, something went wrong. Scouts sent to observe Earth never returned. Probes were intercepted and dismantled mid-air. Then came the transmission, grainy, static-filled, but unmistakable. "You are not welcome here. This is not your territory. Turn back or be destroyed." The Zarketh laughed. Literally. Their command hive broadcasted the message to thousands of systems as a joke. The idea that a species barely a footnote in their galactic logs would dare speak of destruction was a comedy across every Dominion outpost. They didn't know the voice in the message came from a ship. Not just any ship. A warship. Humanity had never fought in the galactic arena before, but they had been watching, learning, adapting. While the galaxy underestimated them, they studied every bit of Dominion tech they could scavenge from fallen probes. They didn't try to match the aliens. No. They built something different. Something terrifying. They called it Nemesis. It wasn't the largest ship ever made. It didn't shimmer with glowing crystals or exotic alien alloys. From the outside, it looked brutal, jagged steel, thick armor, black plating scorched by test battles and artificial storms. But on the inside, every inch was engineered for one purpose: to end war. And now, for the first time, it moved through slipspace. The first target was minor, a Zarketh refueling station orbiting a red dwarf star. Standard procedure: drop from warp, scan, announce intentions. That's how alien diplomacy worked. But Nemesis didn't announce. It opened fire. Kinetic rounds ripped through shielding like paper. Railguns pounded the station's surface until it bled atmosphere. The few Zarketh fighters that scrambled to respond were met with pulse beams and tactical AI-guided missiles that predicted their moves before they even launched. In under 4 minutes, the station was gone, burned to silence, and the galaxy took notice. At first, they assumed it was a fluke. Maybe a rogue pirate vessel armed with stolen Dominion weapons, perhaps a suicide run with lucky shots. But when Nemesis destroyed a second target, this time a war frigate, the doubt started to spread. Who was piloting that thing? More importantly, what was piloting it? The truth was even more unsettling than they imagined. There were only 8 humans aboard. No army, no fleet, just 8, and they were enough. The leader wasn't a general, not in the traditional sense. She had no medals, no flashy armor, no propaganda broadcasts declaring her a savior. Just a black jacket, scarred knuckles, and a voice that never wavered. Her crew didn't speak much. They were all hand-picked, survivors of Earth's hidden wars, veterans of conflicts that the galaxy never saw: cyber sieges, underground rebellions, orbital mutinies. These were not soldiers trained by simulations or battle hymns. These were killers born of necessity. As Nemesis moved deeper into Zarketh space, systems began to panic. For the first time in thousands of years, the Dominion felt vulnerable. They couldn't track the ship, couldn't predict its attacks, couldn't understand how humans had built something capable of such destruction. Whispers started across the stars. They called it the Ghost Ship, the Doom Vessel, the Human Curse. And yet, Earth said nothing. No declaration of war. No alliances. No demand for territory. just silence. Because Nemesis wasn't sent to negotiate. It was sent to teach a lesson. That for all their pride, all their war-born glory, the Zarketh had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the one species that never stopped preparing for war even during peace. And the worst part? This was just the beginning. Zarketh Prime was trembling. Not the planet itself, it remained motionless, regal, the center of an empire, but the silence around it was not one of peace. It was fear. System-wide transmissions were being jammed, encrypted, and looped. Entire war councils had locked themselves behind magnetic doors, poring over the few recordings they had of the human ship. The same 3 minutes of terror played over and over in command rooms. A black ship descending from slipspace. No formal broadcast, no diplomatic hail, just a ripple in gravity, and then fire. Explosions. A dozen Dominion destroyers turned into burning fragments. The only voice caught during the chaos wasn't Zarketh at all, it was human. A woman's voice. If you think war is your birthright, then you were born to die. That line alone had been translated into over 400 dialects across the galaxy within a day. She had no name, no rank, just the voice. Calm, cold, surgical. The voice of someone who didn't fear retaliation because she had already considered every move 10 steps ahead. In every high council across Dominion-controlled space, generals raged. They screamed about retaliation, about fleet formations and massive deployments. They quoted protocol, honor, and the sacred codes of conquest. But behind their bellowing, every eye was fixed on a single, unspoken truth. They didn't know where Nemesis was now. Every Dominion ship sent to track it vanished. No debris, no distress call, just gone. One captain sent a final encrypted message before he disappeared. We were wrong. They're not playing by rules. This ship, it learns, it studies. Every time we think we've seen its tactic, it uses something else. It's like fighting a ghost that remembers every fight. That was the moment the fear became more than whispers. It became policy. Entire planets began evacuating key military leaders. Zarketh academies halted recruitment drives. Frontier zones were declared black sectors, abandoned until further notice. The Dominion was contracting inward, suffocating under its own fear. But the humans aboard Nemesis? They didn't care about fear. They cared about precision. Every mission was pre-planned, not in the traditional sense with orders or target lists. No, their version of planning was personal. Each member of the crew picked their own targets. Every assault was a calculated message. The weapons officer, a quiet man with a stitched scar down his jaw, only targeted fuel depots. He called it strangling the beast. The navigation engineer preferred shipyards. She sabotaged production lines, inserted virus codes into AI controllers, then watched entire facilities turn on themselves. Another crew member, an old sniper with trembling hands but perfect aim, liked orbital defense stations. One by one, he disabled them from 600 kilometers out, marking each with the insignia of a dead human city. Their leader, still unnamed, still only referred to as the Voice, rarely spoke after battles. She would sit in the observation deck of Nemesis, staring into the void, drinking from a dented canteen like she'd done it 1,000 times. They weren't fueled by glory, not vengeance, not conquest. They were there because no one else would stop the Dominion. The Dominion's empire stretched across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They called their reach infinite, though everyone knew that was a lie. Now, the lie had been burned. 116 Dominion ships had vanished in less than a month. Half of them were command class, elite, untouchable. No species had ever done this before. No one had dared to. And for the first time in recorded Zarketh history, the High Council voted unanimously for an action never taken before: open fear protocols. It meant more than just retaliation. It meant broadcasting terror. They would find Nemesis, destroy it in public, and broadcast its wreckage across the stars as a warning. It was not diplomacy. It was desperation. So they built Korath, a trap. A full planetary system was hollowed out and rigged as bait. Dead systems were populated with synthetic life to simulate civilian activity. The Dominion fed false intelligence into fringe communication channels, hoping humans would intercept them. The bait? A fake message from a surviving Earth colony. We're stranded. Coordinates 18.1 by -92.6. If you hear this, please respond. We're not safe. It was cruel, cold, but effective. Because humans, real humans, would never ignore that message. The crew of Nemesis didn't speak when the signal came in. It appeared on their screen with blinking coordinates and the static hum of desperation. The kind of signal no AI could fake completely. The kind of fear only a real voice could hold. They all stared at it for a long time. The leader didn't say a word. Then she nodded. They jumped. When Nemesis emerged from slipspace, they didn't drop shields. They didn't raise weapons. Not immediately. They scanned. The colony looked real. A moon outpost orbiting a gas giant. Hab pods. Weak atmospheric stabilizers. No sign of major life forms. They dropped a probe. The results returned within seconds. Fake. Too fake. The air was sterile. The soil, untouched. Every transmission from the surface was looped, pre-recorded. It wasn't even a good fake. It was lazy. The weapons officer muttered, "They didn't think we'd notice." The leader finally spoke. "They didn't care if we did." She turned toward the pilot, a woman with cybernetic eyes and nerves of steel. "Shields up. Lock onto anything with a heat signature. Prepare for ambush." And right on cue, space tore open. 50 Dominion ships. They erupted from behind the nearby moon, slipping from phase space in perfect formation. A wall of death. "Orders, Captain?" the pilot asked. The leader's voice didn't shake. "Let them think we're scared." Nemesis began drifting just slightly. Like a wounded ship, engines sputtering, power readings flickering. Every scanner on the Dominion fleet lit up with confirmation. Target ship damaged, shields weak, minimal energy output. The Dominion didn't question it. Arrogance was their legacy. They advanced. The closest 3 ships moved in formation, locking tractor beams to capture the vessel intact. And then Nemesis showed its teeth. The pulse detonation was timed down to the microsecond. As the beams locked, the ship's power surged to full, releasing a spherical EMP burst that fried the tractor systems and temporarily blinded their sensors. In that flash of confusion, Nemesis pivoted. 2 railguns rotated into position and fired at once. Not at the fleet, at the moon behind them. The hollowed structure ruptured. A chain of explosions followed ignition chambers, fuel caches, seismic destabilizers, all rigged by the Dominion itself. The entire plan backfired. The moon tore open like a ripe fruit, flinging molten debris and radiation into the advancing ships. 6 were instantly destroyed. 9 more collided trying to flee. And then Nemesis vanished. No flashy exit, just a silent jump into dark space. Back on Zarketh Prime, the transmission from Korath ended abruptly. The council room sat in silence. One admiral, shaking, finally muttered, "We lost a fleet." The others didn't respond. They knew it was worse than that. They had sent the strongest trap they could build. And not only had it failed, it had been used against them. That was the moment the Dominion stopped trying to hunt Nemesis. They started hiding from it. But the humans weren't done. They began leaving messages. Every time a Dominion base was destroyed, a single signal was broadcast, just one line. "This is for the forgotten, for the broken, for the burned." Some believed it referred to Earth's long-hidden war crimes committed by the Dominion centuries ago, mass sterilizations, slave colonies, erased records. Some thought it was deeper, personal. But no one knew for sure, not even the crew. because their leader had never explained why she fought. She simply did. And as their legend grew, other alien races began to take notice. Not enemies. Witnesses. Whispers spread of a ship that defied war. Of humans who didn't conquer but punished those who did. Of a vessel that struck with surgical vengeance, then vanished without a trace. Some called Nemesis a myth. Others called it a prophecy. And yet, for the Dominion, it was a curse made real. Because as long as Nemesis existed, the Zarketh would never sleep peacefully again. Every fleet launch came with hesitation. Every broadcast carried dread. Because somewhere, in the dark between stars, a single human warship still hunted them, and it would not stop. Not until the last war was burned from their bones. In the weeks that followed the Korath trap, the Zarketh Dominion collapsed inward like a dying star. It wasn't just the loss of ships or failed ambushes. That kind of loss could be measured, replaced. They'd endured worse in the past. But this was different. They were being studied. Every attack now felt personal. Calculated. Not random destruction, but dissection. Nemesis didn't just hit military targets anymore, it exposed weaknesses. Supply lines, command hubs, propaganda centers. The very arteries of the Empire were being severed one by one. The Dominion's war machine ran on structure, control, and the illusion of invincibility. But now, the image was shattered. Every soldier that boarded a ship did so knowing they might not return. Not because they'd lose in battle, but because they might never even see their attacker. The humans never stayed in one place long enough for counterstrikes. And so, paranoia spread faster than war ever had. On outposts along the frontier, Zarketh commanders began turning on each other. Accusations of betrayal, cowardice, or collaboration with the humans became excuses for purges. Loyal soldiers were executed for imagined slights. Civilian transports were grounded. Entire sectors were locked down with no explanation. The Dominion's once mighty structure was now feeding on itself. And still, Nemesis moved. From system to system, they carved a slow, quiet path. They weren't conquering planets or demanding surrender. They didn't speak to the press. They didn't claim territory. They burned symbols. On a military archive world called Mevrak 9, they dropped out of slipspace and deployed a single satellite into orbit. The satellite transmitted a signal that penetrated every comms channel, playing a visual loop. A Zarketh scientist, standing over the body of a human child. Needles, wires, a cold surgical table. Footage, long buried, long denied. The camera panned slowly as voices in the background laughed, took notes, and walked away. The footage ended with a message. We didn't forget. Mevrak 9's surface burned 6 minutes later. There were no survivors. The Dominion tried to deny it. They called it fabricated, AI-generated lies. But among the fringe colonies, among the alien species under Zarketh control, people started whispering differently. What if the humans weren't monsters? What if they were punishing them? In the outer rim, a small moon known as Vekar had been occupied by the Dominion for centuries. Its people, thin, scaled creatures with soft voices, had long since stopped dreaming of freedom. They were workers, functionaries, barely allowed education, never allowed to leave. But when Nemesis destroyed the orbital command tower above their skies, the invaders fled overnight. No speech was given. No order passed down. Just silence. Then escape pods. Then freedom. For the first time in 300 years, Vekar was alone. The elders gathered in their central chambers and looked up at the stars. There was no transmission, no message, only a single object, left in orbit above their sky. A broken Zarketh helmet, floating slowly in vacuum, with the word justice etched in its plating. That night, the Vakari danced in the streets. They began telling stories, not of human terror but of retribution, of balance, of a shadow ship that punished the wicked and vanished like a myth. And so, the legend spread. Even among alien worlds who had never met a human who had once feared them as unstable, war-hungry creatures, now there was something else in the air. Respect. Maybe even hope. On board Nemesis, nothing felt different. They didn't talk about their growing reputation, didn't monitor news feeds or track rumors. That wasn't why they were out here. They just kept moving. Each crew member had a role, but they were more than just soldiers. They were chosen for a reason. Each scar on their body and mind made them perfect for this ship. In the mess hall, the engineer sat across from the pilot, slurping instant noodles like they were on a long-haul cargo freighter instead of the most feared vessel in the galaxy. "Did you see what they called us now?" the pilot muttered, barely looking up. "Ghost wraiths." The engineer raised an eyebrow. "Last week we were fire demons. And before that, something about nightmares?" The weapons officer grunted from the corner. "They'll call us anything. Doesn't matter, they're scared. That's enough." A quiet silence followed. Then the captain walked in. She rarely spoke in casual spaces. But this time, she held an old datapad in her hand. Scratched, half broken. Probably Earth-made. She placed it gently on the center of the table and said, "Read this." The crew gathered slowly, curious. The screen blinked to life. It was a list. Names. Dozens of them. Children, women, elderly, all civilians, all human, all recorded as casualties of failed uplift procedure 112X. A Dominion experiment. They'd tried to rewrite human biology, splicing, testing, injecting Dominion code into DNA strands. Hundreds died, maybe more. Buried deep in a data vault, long thought destroyed. Until Nemesis found it. The captain's voice didn't rise, it didn't tremble. "These are not just numbers, these are not just martyrs." She pointed to one name. A boy, age 6. "This was my brother." Nobody said a word. Now they understood. She didn't lead for glory. She led because she remembered every face the Dominion tried to erase. Elsewhere, in a hidden vault beneath Zarketh Prime, the High Chancellor stared at a screen showing star maps. A blinking red line moved system by system. They knew Nemesis was heading for the core. Not immediately, but eventually. Every move so far, every strike, was deliberate. It was circling closer. Not in a straight line, but like a predator. The Dominion was bleeding. Not just in bodies. In belief. Whole sectors had stopped responding to central commands. Fleet captains were refusing deployment. Propaganda centers were being abandoned. But it wasn't just the fear of death. It was the fear of being watched. The humans hadn't created an army. They'd created a symbol. A single warship had undone thousands of years of order. And they still didn't know how. What they didn't know was that Nemesis wasn't powered by raw firepower. It was powered by the one thing every alien species had underestimated in humans: adaptation. Zarketh technology followed strict doctrine, rules, patterns, generations of the same strategy built on tradition. But humans? They weren't bound by legacy. The AI core inside Nemesis wasn't just reactive. It was curious. Every battle it survived, it learned. Every system it entered, it rewrote maps, patterns, weaknesses. The ship's software wasn't locked. It evolved. It adjusted tactics based on enemy decisions before they were made. Each human on board had allowed it full access to their brains, neural interface, thought feedback, decision overlays. It didn't control them. It worked with them. Symbiosis. In less than 6 months, Nemesis had become more than a ship. It was alive. And it hated the Dominion. One night, if you could call artificial starlight night, 2 crew members sat outside the command bay, backs against the cold steel. They didn't talk about war. They talked about Earth. "I miss the smell of rain," one said, eyes closed. "You ever think about that?" "Every day," the other replied. "Think we'll go back someday?" A pause. "I don't think we were ever meant to." They fell quiet again. Because deep down, every one of them knew Nemesis wasn't going home. This ship, this mission, it wasn't just about payback. It was about correction. And sometimes, those who fix the broken things never get to see what they save. Zarketh Prime's skies were no longer bright. The orbital rings had gone dark. The defense grid was failing sector by sector. Fuel supplies were rationed. Morale had vanished. They were alone. For the first time in the Dominion's history, they were not feared, they were hunted. And the worst part? No message. No warning. Just the ever-growing silence as more of their empire disappeared. A whisper grew among the civilians, not of rebellion, but of surrender, to a myth. And deep in space, Nemesis continued forward, its engines quiet, its crew silent. Not because they were tired, but because they weren't finished. Not yet. The Zarketh had long prided themselves on the illusion of unity. From the lowest data scribe to the highest war admiral, obedience wasn't just expected, it was bred. Their indoctrination started at birth. Loyalty was encoded into their language, their education, their architecture. Even their ships followed symmetrical, hierarchical design patterns that mimicked their chain of command. But loyalty was a fragile thing when faced with fear. And fear had a new name now: Nemesis. The Dominion once thought of humans as savages, technologically backward, emotionally unstable, irrational. That mistake had cost them over 600 ships and 19 fortified colonies in 4 months. But the real damage couldn't be measured in wreckage. It was in the silence, spreading across the stars. Entire sectors had gone dark, not because Nemesis had attacked them, but because their own commanders had cut communications. Some out of paranoia. Others because they were hiding. Desertions were becoming common. Zarketh soldiers would abandon their posts in the middle of the night. Some took shuttles and fled to the unregulated fringe systems. Others simply walked into space and never returned. There were even whispers, desperate rumors that some defectors had tried to contact the humans, to join them. The Dominion officially denied this, of course. Publicly, they claimed the defectors had been captured and cleansed. Privately, no one knew. What they did know was this: every system that experienced a Nemesis sighting soon became a ghost town. On board Nemesis, the captain stared at a rotating star map. Not holographic, not fancy, just a digital display, grainy and efficient. She preferred it that way. Lines of red crisscrossed across the screen, markings, notes, patterns. Not military routes, cultural routes. She was mapping not the Dominion's military reach, but its control systems. The propaganda satellites, the schools that rewrote history, the religious institutions that declared the Zarketh bloodline divine, the broadcasting towers that pumped out obedience through rituals and ancient codes. Destroying ships wasn't enough. To kill the Dominion, you had to kill the idea of the Dominion. The crew gathered around her in silence. "We hit the mind next," she said finally. "Not the muscle. The heart's already rotting." The engineer nodded. "Target?" She pointed to the red mark on the display. Varnak Central Memory Core, a planet-sized archive buried deep under ice and rock. It wasn't a command center. It wasn't defended like a fortress. But it was sacred. Inside that facility was the historical memory of the entire Zarketh species, thousands of years of art, propaganda, cultural indoctrination, scientific data, and rewritten truth. It was their holy vault. The crew didn't question the decision. They prepared for war. Meanwhile, back in the Dominion's central systems, the Council was imploding. The once glorious High Command no longer met in person. Their towers were empty, their halls silent. Each counselor now lived in fortified bunkers, speaking only through encrypted transmissions, most of which were filled with blame. They accused each other of failure, treason, cowardice, and they were right. One by one, power-hungry leaders tried to seize emergency control. They activated old AI war protocols. restarted sleeper fleets built during past rebellions, ordered assassinations, tortured their own advisors, hoping to find human sympathizers. But it didn't matter, because none of them could find Nemesis. And Nemesis had already found them. Varnak was a cold, dead world. Not by nature, it had been drained. Centuries ago, the Zarketh had chosen it as the seat of remembrance. They ripped its core out, built layers upon layers of armored data vaults, and turned it into a monolithic monument to their greatness. They believed it would never be touched. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't a target. They were wrong. Nemesis came out of slipspace without ceremony. No announcement, no false alarms, no warning. The defense grid barely activated before it was silenced. A single precision strike, a payload of graviton-charged EMP rounds, shut down orbital security in 17 seconds. Then came the descent. The landing was fast, surgical. A small detachment, just 4 humans deployed onto the surface. They weren't there to fight. They were there to erase. Inside the core, hundreds of Zarketh data monks robed, silent, expressionless, sat frozen as the humans walked in. The humans didn't fire. They walked past them, quiet, calm. The lead operative placed a small black box at the base of the central archive spire. It emitted a low hum, then a single click. The monk nearest to him whispered, "You cannot destroy truth." The operative looked at him. No hatred, no rage, just pity. Your truth was built on bones. The box activated. Every record, every memory, every sculpture, every edited historical log, every fake painting, every rewritten legend gone. Not just deleted, rewritten. The core's data was replaced with real records, uncensored footage, hidden files, intercepted messages, and the full history of the Dominion's atrocities. All of it. Flooded into their sacred system like venom in the veins. Within minutes, the Zarketh galaxy-wide education system went into meltdown. Children learning about the great rise of Zarketh civilization were shown footage of mass burn pits. Priests preaching about divine superiority found their sermons replaced with data logs of forced sterilization and medical torture on hundreds of alien worlds. Museums shut down, news channels blacked out, propaganda programs were flooded with reality. And at the center of it all, one symbol was displayed over every screen. A jagged black silhouette of Nemesis, and beneath it, the words, "We remember what you buried." The Dominion didn't respond for 5 days. They were paralyzed. They didn't just lose a battle, they lost control of narrative. It was the one thing they had held longer than anything else. Longer than any war. Longer than any territory. And now, their own people were turning. On dozens of planets, riots broke out. Statues were torn down. Zarketh civilians began questioning everything. Whole garrisons laid down their arms. There was no central order behind it. Just doubt. That was all Nemesis ever needed to spread doubt. In a secure chamber beneath the surface of a Dominion capital moon, the last loyal fleet commander knelt before the High Chancellor. His armor was dented, his eyes bloodshot. He hadn't slept in 4 days. He trembled as he spoke. "They are not here to win a war," he said. "They are here to erase us." The Chancellor snarled. "Then we strike Earth. Now. We glass their planet. Burn their oceans. Show them what fear is." The commander looked up slowly. He whispered, "We don't know where Earth is." A silence thicker than death filled the chamber. They had lost access to the human coordinates. Every probe sent toward Sol had been intercepted. Their cartography maps had been overwritten by Nemesis's cyber attacks. They could no longer find the cradle of humanity. Even if they wanted to strike back, they couldn't. Nemesis had done more than attack their fleets. It had cut them off from their revenge. Now they were truly alone. Elsewhere, Nemesis hovered in the void between stars. The crew sat together, quietly watching as news feeds came in, not Dominion broadcasts, but intercepted footage from liberated colonies, now free to speak. They watched a child from the Vicari species paint the Nemesis silhouette on a wall, then salute it. They watched a group of defected alien engineers rebuild a transmitter, now broadcasting the truth about Dominion war crimes. They watched change. The weapons officer lit a cigarette, exhaled, and muttered, "I never thought I'd see this." The engineer whispered, "They're rising." The captain didn't speak. She just stared at the stars. Eyes narrowed. "We're not finished," she said. The pilot turned. "Where to next?" She pointed to the farthest point on the map, Zarketh Prime. The core. The heart. The birthplace of the Empire. They all stared. It was a death sentence. A planetary fortress. The last stronghold of the Dominion, armored to the core, defended by their remaining elite fleets, and the place where the Dominion had begun its 1,000-year reign. The pilot said nothing. She just smiled. "Let's end this." Zarketh Prime. The heart of the Dominion. A planet not just protected by fleets and guns, but by fear, myths, and centuries of calculated control. Orbiting the violet giant hung more than just warships. There were rings of living satellites, hollowed-out moons turned into intelligence nodes. Every scrap of metal was layered with quantum shields and plasma arrays. Anything that drifted too close was immediately turned to ash. This wasn't just their capital. It was their pride. Their arrogance given form. And Nemesis was headed straight for it. There was no element of surprise anymore. The galaxy knew. A dozen species watched through illegal channels, hiding behind encryption layers and broken Dominion sensors, waiting, not because they thought Nemesis would win, but because they hoped. Inside the war room aboard Nemesis, the crew stood around the projection table. A single 3D image rotated in silence, Zarketh Prime, and its defensive net. The engineer was the first to speak. "Any direct jump to orbit gets us shredded in seconds. We'll be vapor before we're even seen." The weapons officer added, "The defense ring's adaptive. AI run. Rotating frequencies. Last I checked, they've still got 6 Dreadnought-class flagships circling the pole." The pilot frowned. "And ground-based interceptors, too. Launch windows are random. They don't even follow a pattern anymore. Paranoia's got them punching shadows." Everyone turned to the captain. She just stared at the image. Then finally, she spoke. "Good." They blinked. Let them panic. Let them burn fuel trying to shoot ghosts. Her hand tapped a blinking point on the map. Vector 17C, a dead orbital sector above the planet's southern hemisphere. It had been left offline since the early expansion days, a flaw in their confidence. Too small to matter, too far from the political towers. Overlooked. We jump there. No weapons, no broadcast. Silent drop. We get in under the net. The others exchanged looks. That route was close to suicidal. But they'd followed her this far, and she hadn't been wrong yet. The captain looked at the pilot. "Prep the jump." The pilot nodded and headed for the bridge. The captain turned to the rest. "We don't need to win. We just need to cut deep enough that they can't stop bleeding." As Nemesis prepared for transit, Zarketh Prime was descending into its own kind of chaos. The Dominion's upper command had fractured. The Council was no more. Assassinations had reduced it to one voice. High Chancellor Kesrock, an aging warlord who had clawed his way to power not through merit, but fear. He sat alone in his throne chamber, watching the flickering feeds. Civilian riots in the outer cities. Ships defecting. Officers questioning orders. Priests begging for answers. His empire was crumbling. But one thing still held the ring. The last unbroken defense perimeter around Zarketh Prime, a constellation of death. No ship had breached it in 300 years. Kesrock stared at the feed as a war officer stepped forward. "High One," the officer said cautiously. "We have detected an anomaly. A single ship, human signature, unknown entry vector. They've jumped in. Silent." Kesrock smiled. "Let them come." The jump was rough. Silent mode meant reduced stabilizers, no shields, no reactive dampeners. Nemesis rattled as it burst from slip space directly above Sector 17C. The crew gritted their teeth, gripping onto rails, sweat streaking their faces. The pilot called out, "We're in. No immediate lock. We're under the ring." The weapons officer muttered, "They don't see us yet." "Then we do this now," the captain said. Nemesis broke through the clouds like a falling meteor, descending toward the lower orbit layers of Zarketh Prime. Below, the capital continent stretched wide, a spiral of towering spires, artificial islands, and layered citadels. The Dominion's history was written into the concrete, but they had never imagined that history would come home to haunt them. As the ship plunged lower, alarms began to echo across the capital. At first, scattered, then synchronized. Target locks initiated. Defense towers rotated. Dreadnoughts scrambled. But it was too late. Nemesis had broken the veil. The first strike didn't come from outside. It came from within. The AI core of Nemesis, synced with Dominion frequencies through hijacked data nodes from previous raids, activated a virus. One that had been written months ago, crafted specifically for this moment. Buried in the Dominion's own code. A signal pulsed. Across Zarketh Prime, the automated turret systems turned and began targeting their own support fleets. Sky towers blacked out. Elevators stopped midair. Doors locked commanders inside their bunkers. It wasn't a weapon assault. It was system collapse. Then came the first blast. A kinetic strike from Nemesis's spine cannon tore through one of the orbital command domes, cracking its fusion core and lighting up the night with artificial dawn. Zarketh's skies turned red. In the war chamber, High Chancellor Kesrock screamed into a comms panel. "Return fire." "We can't, High One," came the reply. "They've disabled our targeting arrays. The virus sits inside our own defense net." He struck his console with a trembling claw. "Then send everything. Scramble the fleets. Bring them down with their ship if you have to." But even as he shouted, Nemesis continued its descent. They weren't staying in orbit. They were landing. The ship touched down in the ruins of an abandoned courtyard, once used for victory parades. Its steel belly opened with a hiss. The crew emerged. No fanfare, no banners, just shadows and war-quiet breath. Each wore matte black armor, no symbols, no rank. Just purpose. The captain led them across the stone courtyard. Above them, the sky raged with incoming Dominion fighters, scrambled too late. Below them, the Tower of Dominion stood, the Palace of Power, untouched for centuries. This would be the last time it stood. Inside the tower, guards fled. Not because of orders, but because of fear. They had grown up hearing stories of the humans. Primitive, pathetic, beatable. But the ones now walking through the smoke and steel? They weren't stories. They were the reckoning. The crew moved through the tower floor by floor, planting charges, hacking systems, destroying data cores. Each room was sterilized. Not with fire, but with truth. Every hallway broadcasted the footage from the erased colonies. The faces of the dead. The names once removed from history. Zarketh officers, once proud and decorated, now curled in corners, whispering apologies to no one. Then came the final chamber. The captain entered alone. Inside, Kesrock stood before a massive window, watching the burning sky. He didn't turn. "I suppose this is the end," he muttered. The captain said nothing. He glanced over his shoulder. "Do you know what we were trying to do?" She stepped forward. "You were trying to become gods." He chuckled, tired and bitter. "We were trying to protect the future. You humans, your chaos, emotion, rebellion. We wanted to bring order." She stared at him. "You brought graves." Kesrock exhaled. "You can kill me. You can burn this tower. But you can't kill an empire." She raised a small device. "You already did." The charges blew. The Tower of Dominion collapsed in on itself, the top half crumbling into ash as the screams of centuries were silenced in fire and stone. Nemesis didn't stay. The moment their mission was done, the crew retreated through side alleys, slipping back into their ship before the fleet could react. The sky was chaos now. Dominion dreadnoughts were firing blindly. Whole districts were igniting. Civilians were tearing down the statues with their bare hands. The spell had broken. As Nemesis lifted off, the captain stood at the viewing window. The tower was gone. The palace reduced to rubble. The symbol of Zarketh power shattered. Behind her, the weapons officer whispered, "We actually did it." She didn't smile. She just said, "Not yet." The pilot turned in her seat. "Where to now?" The captain looked back at the planet, at the broken skyline, the flames licking the heavens. Then she looked forward. There are still other empires watching. She walked to the command chair, sat down. "Let them know. This is what happens when you build power on bones." Zarketh Prime burned for 7 days. Not from orbital bombardment. Not from total annihilation. But from something far worse in the Dominion's eyes. Revelation. Every lie they had told collapsed with the Tower of Dominion. The world's skyline, once a jagged parade of power, was now broken. Half the orbital ring hung in twisted ruins, lighting the night skies with debris trails. Fires roared across the upper city districts, fed not by bombs but by riots. Every broadcast station had been hijacked. Every statue, every monument, every carved scripture praising Zarketh's superiority pulled down by the hands of the very civilians raised to worship them. The footage from Nemesis played on loop across all sectors. The captain's voice, brief, calm, and cold, was now immortalized. "This is not justice. This is memory. This is what happens when the forgotten return." It wasn't a war cry. It was a eulogy. And in the aftermath, across the galaxy, silence followed. But not for long. On the edge of the Drascat cluster, a sentient insectoid species, the Thrakes, gathered in stunned silence. For nearly 200 years, they had served as one of the Zarketh's auxiliary workforces. Not slaves in name, but slaves in reality. They had been promised citizenship, genetic enhancements, peace through obedience. Now they watched as Zarketh Prime crumbled. The eldest among them, his carapace dulled with age, stood before his people and said something no Thrake had spoken in 3 generations. "We are not bound anymore." And with that, they cut the beacon ties linking their planet to Dominion Command. They did not wait for permission. In the Delvani spiral, another species, the Vesh, activated long-dormant satellites. These were relics from a forgotten rebellion, useless for decades. Until now. With the Dominion distracted, the Vesh rearmed. Underground cells surfaced. Former rebels emerged from exiles and ruins. They didn't need a signal from Nemesis. They had seen what humans could do. Not with fleets, not with diplomacy, but with purpose and rage. Not all reactions were hopeful. In the darker sectors, power vacuums opened. Warlords moved in like vultures. Dominion governors, once loyal, now declared themselves rulers of independent provinces. They scrambled to take what scraps of power they could, remnants of fleets, factories, information caches. One of them, a Zarketh admiral named Serac, stood before his hollowed war room, staring at a tattered star map. "Let the humans think they've won," he spat. "They opened the gates, but I'll fill the void." He didn't understand. It wasn't about who ruled next. It was about what had changed. In the shadows between systems, the name Nemesis became legend. Not as a ship, as a message. Smugglers used the name as a code. "Is Nemesis watching?" meant, "Are they listening? Are we being tracked?" Pirates began painting black silhouettes on their hulls. Not to mimic the humans, but to scare Dominion remnants into surrender. Even species who had never met a human began to respect them, not out of love, not even trust, but out of awe. Because Nemesis hadn't just defeated the Dominion, it had exposed it. and no one had ever done that before. Inside the ship, things were quieter. The adrenaline of the mission had faded. The smell of scorched armor and recycled air returned. The hum of the AI core drifted through the halls like an old friend whispering lullabies. In the mess bay, the pilot sat with the engineer, slouched over a datapad playing old Earth music, soft, scratchy, broken by static. Something ancient, piano and rain. The engineer sipped rehydrated coffee. Never thought I'd see it. Zarketh Prime? No. That tower falling. The way it felt. Like gravity broke. The pilot didn't answer at first. Then, you think they'll come after us now? They always were. Yeah, but now they're desperate. We just killed their god. The engineer chuckled bitterly. Good. Let 'em try. In the background, the music kept playing. In the armory, the weapons officer sat alone, cleaning a sidearm he hadn't fired in months. He didn't need to. Most of his work was done through Nemesis's cannons, long-range strikes, predictive protocols. Still, the weapon was personal. The crew didn't ask what it meant. They respected the silence it carried. The captain stood in her quarters, looking at a small, cracked photograph, one of the few personal items allowed on board. It showed a family. Earth background, trees. A younger version of herself holding the hand of a boy, maybe 10 years old. Both were smiling. Neither was alive anymore. She didn't cry. She never did. Instead, she reached toward the wall panel and touched the AI interface. A soft chime responded. "Captain," the AI said. "Status? Repairs complete. Energy stable. Enemy activity within expected range. Dominion signals reduced by 86%. Collapse of Central Command confirmed." She nodded. "New targets?" A pause. Then, "Yes. 4 regional commanders attempting to rebuild. 2 rogue fleets consolidating. 1 science station developing next-gen warforms. Are they threats? They're symptoms." Another pause. Then the AI said something unexpected. "Would you like to stop, Captain?" She didn't answer right away. Outside her window, the stars stretched cold, uncaring, infinite. She whispered, "We started this because no one else could." "Correct. But now everyone's watching. Everyone knows." "Yes. So maybe we don't need to finish it alone." The AI paused, processing. Then, "Noted." A day later, a message was sent. Not encrypted, not hidden. Broadcast wide across the fringe networks, where Dominion survivors still scurried in the dark, and oppressed species had begun to raise their heads. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. A simple transmission. "We are not your rulers. We are not your army. We are the consequence you thought would never come. Rise. Or stay in chains. We won't fight your war for you, but we'll stand with those who stand for themselves." Nemesis. In the following weeks, resistance bloomed like fireflowers across forgotten worlds. The Vesh Council formally declared independence and seized 3 Dominion weapons facilities. The Thrakes took over a border station and turned it into a refugee hub. An unaligned species called the Harakai sent a message to Nemesis. "We believed power made truth. Now we see you've flipped that. You gave us something we didn't know we still had, a reason." And all across the stars, a new term emerged. Post-Dominion era. No treaties. No official surrender. Just broken chains and open eyes. But not all were free. In the deep black, beyond the known sectors, something else stirred. The Dominion had secrets buried far from their core systems. Experiments, weapon labs, things too dangerous to be used during peacetime even for them. And now that peace was gone. One of these labs, codenamed Krethos, came back online. Inside it, a being awoke. Not entirely organic, not fully machine. Built from scraps of dozens of conquered species, designed for a single purpose: to survive humans. Its mind was filled with simulated battles. Its nerves carried Dominion fire. Its memory banks played back every loss inflicted by Nemesis. It had one objective: hunt the ship, and it had already locked onto their signature. Back aboard Nemesis, the captain stood in the central viewing bay as the crew gathered. "We don't know what's next," she said, "but we do know we've made them afraid." The pilot spoke first. "Afraid enemies are dangerous. Terrified ones are worse," the engineer added. The weapons officer cracked his neck. "Let 'em come." The captain looked at them. "We didn't come out here to be heroes. And we're not trying to be saviors." She looked down at the stars. "We're a reminder." They stood in silence, watching space drift by. Waiting. Ready. The galaxy had shifted. Where once there was fear, now there was resistance. The Dominion had not officially fallen. There were no signed treaties, no parades, no declarations, but its hold had fractured. Dozens of systems had gone silent, not because they were destroyed, but because they were finally free. On worlds like Vekar, the skies no longer carried the scent of fuel burn and conquest. Children painted on walls with bare fingers, carving human symbols into cracked stone. Nemesis was not worshipped. It was remembered. The ship had become legend. Not just among humans, but among the shattered, scarred, and surviving. But legends never stay untouched. Because somewhere deep in the void, far from the noise of the reborn galaxy, something was moving. Krithos was a dead moon. That's what the Dominion had called it. That's what the records said. A lifeless rock, off-grid, orbiting a black star in the Zentol fold. But Krithos wasn't dead. It was hidden. Buried beneath miles of synthetic rock and false radiation signatures was a facility so secret even most Dominion warlords hadn't known it existed. It had one purpose: a contingency. A creation built for the moment when everything failed, when humans could no longer be contained by strategy, or fleets, or fire. They called the program Oblivion Protocol. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a weapon. It was one being. He opened his eyes. Not slowly, not with confusion. His systems lit up in exact order. No wasted power. No delay. He had been created in a vat of engineered tissue, alloyed bone, and plasma-reactive nerve fibers. His skin could withstand orbital pressure. His lungs could filter vacuum dust. His brain carried both organic emotion responses and hardwired combat instincts. He looked human, deliberately, because he was built to understand them and destroy them. His designation was simple: Project Revenant. His last command, encoded into his thoughts: track, analyze, eliminate the vessel Nemesis. He stepped from the birthing chamber. No hesitation, no questions. The Dominion scientists who'd created him were long dead, either in revolts or Nemesis's assaults. But he didn't need orders. He had already calculated 1,000 possible outcomes. He had already begun to hunt. Back aboard Nemesis, the crew was quiet. Since the fall of Zarketh Prime, they had moved slowly through the rim sectors, not to rest, but to observe, to watch the aftermath unfold. On some worlds, they made contact with rebel leaders. On others, they simply appeared above orbit for a few minutes, then vanished just enough to remind those in power that consequences still flew in the dark. But something had changed. The captain felt it first, in her bones. The AI confirmed it next. Energy distortion detected. Directional sweep, not a fleet. A single signal. Dominion? She asked. No, the AI replied. Not logged in any known protocol. It's not broadcasting, it's listening. The engineer furrowed her brow. Listening for what? The AI paused. For us. The captain turned toward the others. Something's hunting. Revenant did not sleep. He did not need time to adjust. He moved from Krethos in a stolen stealth frigate, one of the last Dominion Black Ops vessels still functional. No escort, no backup, no broadcast. He had calculated Nemesis's probable next location based on their known attack vectors, recovery windows, and emotional patterning. He didn't think like a war commander. He thought like them. That was his advantage. Revenant wasn't designed to overpower Nemesis. He was designed to be Nemesis only better. No fear, no hesitation, no past. Only the mission. The crew aboard Nemesis didn't relax. They didn't talk about peace, or retirement, or home. They had long accepted that this ship was their world now. Still, the tension was rising again. Small things. The pilot double-checking nav calculations 3 times instead of once. The weapons officer spending hours alone in the firing chamber, running silent simulations with targets that looked more like people than ships. The engineer talking in her sleep whispers about shadows, unfinished wars, strange signals echoing back across dead systems. And the captain? She stood by the observation deck more often now, arms crossed, jaw tight. Because something about the silence wasn't right. The Dominion should have been fighting harder, at least a final scream before death. But all they got was nothing, which meant someone was waiting. Then the first ghost came. A distress call. Not from a planet, but a ship. A refugee barge from the Harakai, en route to a Freeport station. The call was faint, broken, frantic. "Please, this is cargo vessel X-13. We've been boarded. Not pirates. Something else. No demands." They didn't speak. He just walked through us like we weren't even static. Cut off. Nemesis tracked the signal. It wasn't far. Less than 3 sectors away. They jumped. What they found wasn't a battle scene. It was surgery. The refugee ship hadn't been destroyed. It had been opened deliberately. Hull plating removed with surgical precision. Crew logs erased. Power core drained, not detonated. Even the bodies stacked in perfect lines. No sign of chaos or fear. Whoever did this hadn't come to kill. They had come to study. The captain stood on the bridge, staring at the horror on the main screen. "This wasn't war," the pilot muttered. "This was observation." The AI confirmed what they all feared. Genetic material extracted. Neural scans attempted. Patterns suggest mimicry. The weapons officer whispered, "They're building another one of us." The captain didn't move. Her voice was flat. "No, they're building something worse." Revenant had left a message. Not words. Not threats. But in the center of the gutted refugee ship, scrawled onto the command console in a substance that didn't come from any known tool. "You taught me how to kill you." Nemesis didn't retreat. They never had. But they did pause. For the first time in the campaign, the crew held a full lockdown meeting. No ranks. No filters. The engineer said, "This isn't a ship, it's a person." The weapons officer said, "Not a person, a copy." The pilot added, "But a copy made after we started winning, which means it's learned everything we've done." The captain sat at the head of the table. She didn't blink, didn't frown. "This thing, whatever it is, was created in a lab, but it walks like us, thinks like us. And it's not guessing anymore, it's studying." The AI confirmed. "Based on trajectory, speed, and pattern, I estimate we have 3 to 4 days before engagement." "Location?" the captain asked. "Unknown. It will not strike where we expect. It is seeking an emotional response, a challenge." The room fell quiet. And then the captain said something no one expected. "Let's give it one." They made the call. Public. Wideband. They broke silence across every fringe system and open network. The captain appeared on the screen, face hard, eyes locked straight ahead. "To the one who hunts us. We're not prey. We don't run. You want us? Come find us. Coordinates uploaded. We'll be waiting." They ended the transmission. Some called it madness. Others called it courage. But the crew knew the truth. This wasn't about fear anymore. It was about finishing what they started. 3 days later, a signal appeared. Not from deep space. not from a hidden lab, but from within Nemesis's own systems. A flicker, a phantom, a shadow of code dancing across the AI's subsystems just enough to say, "Acknowledged." The stars above Sector 0 Gamma shimmered with an unnatural stillness. It was a dead zone, no trade, no colonies, no patrol routes, a patch of space forgotten by both the Dominion and the free worlds. Empty, black, soundless. It was perfect. Nemesis floated in silence. No weapons primed, no evasive maneuvers, just idle drift, lights dimmed to their lowest pulse. It looked like a ghost, but it was very much alive. Inside, the crew prepared. The engineer triple-checked power cores, then locked herself in the lower maintenance decks, whispering old Earth poems to herself as she calibrated reactor dampeners by hand. The weapons officer loaded a revolver. Not a railgun, not a plasma cannon. A simple, human-made revolver scratched, old, heavy. "This is personal," he muttered. The pilot calibrated the ship's reaction speed to sub-millisecond response. She overrode the safety limiters on evasive protocols. Her hands trembled slightly as she whispered to the AI, "He's faster than us, so we'll have to be smarter." And the captain stood alone on the observation deck, watching the vast dark. Waiting. He came without a sound. No warning, no burst from slip space. One moment, there was silence. Then a silhouette, sleek, narrow, matte black, and human-shaped, drifted across the void like a knife through silk. Revenant. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His ship was barely a quarter the size of Nemesis, but it pulsed with stolen energy, engineered human tech fused with Dominion science, a hybrid of war-bred logic and relentless mimicry. He was humanity's reflection in a cracked, blood-streaked mirror. A voice crackled across the bridge. No video, just calm, cold sound. "I have arrived." The captain didn't move. She simply said, "You were built to kill us. I was built to complete you, to perfect your failures, to remove your emotion, your hesitation, your weakness. You think that's what made us win?" A pause. "No. It is what allowed you to survive. That is no longer necessary." The weapons officer grunted. "Can we shut him up yet?" "Not yet," the captain said. Her eyes didn't blink. "You ended the Dominion, but in doing so, you became them." The pilot raised an eyebrow. "That's rich coming from a lab rat." Revenant didn't respond to the insult. He didn't need approval. Or anger. He simply needed the signal to attack. The captain gave it first. "Now," Nemesis flared to life. Engines kicked to max output in a single breath, flinging the ship sideways as a burst of white-hot plasma tore through the space it had just occupied. The shields flared, pushed to their bleeding edge as Revenant's ship gave chase. No words, no announcements. This was war, pure and final. The AI howled across the bridge. "He's predicting our movements." "Good," the captain said. "Let's give him something he can't predict." The battle was unlike anything seen before in galactic history. Not because of scale, but because of speed, precision, intention. Where massive fleets once clashed in brute force firepower, this was a duel of minds. Nemesis fired a decoy round only to detonate it mid-flight, using the explosion to mask a second, curved railgun shot that bent around debris. Revenant countered by twisting space around his hull, creating a false trajectory that made every scanner read him 20 meters to the left. Each moment, the two ships danced death through space, weapons flaring and fading, signals crossed, shadows chasing shadows. Then Revenant did something new. He stopped firing and launched himself. The impact was like thunder in a vacuum. Revenant tore through Nemesis's lower deck with his bare hands, shredding steel, ripping open hatches, moving with unnatural grace. The engineer barely had time to raise her wrench before she was flung across the room, ribs cracking against the bulkhead. Revenant didn't kill her. He didn't even look at her. He moved on, methodically, toward the core. The pilot rerouted internal pressure to close bulkhead doors. Didn't stop him. The weapons officer met him halfway. They didn't talk. They just fought. Revenant moved like thought, each motion flawless, efficient, utterly devoid of hesitation. But the weapons officer wasn't trying to win. He was trying to stall. With every swing, every dodge, every shot from the old revolver, he bought seconds. Seconds that the captain needed. Seconds to finish what she started. In the heart of Nemesis, the AI core pulsed. The captain stood before it, calm, focused, speaking aloud not to the crew, but to the ship itself. "You've seen what we've done, what we became. You've evolved. So did he. But you still know what we are." The AI's voice was slower now. Not frightened. Contemplative. "I am not like him." "No," she said. "You're ours." "Then give the order." She looked toward the ceiling, toward the stars, toward every system still holding its breath. Then she whispered, "Do it." When Revenant reached the bridge, he didn't find fear. He found the captain, alone, waiting. He stepped forward. "You should have fled." She tilted her head. "Why would we run from ourselves?" "I am the evolution of your intent." "No," she said. "You're the consequence of it." He lunged. She didn't move, because the floor beneath him opened, and the AI core, synced to every internal system, flooded the room with high-energy ionic disruption waves designed specifically from human brain patterns. He staggered. Not dead, but confused. For the first time since birth, Revenant hesitated. And in that breath, the captain stepped forward and pressed a simple, physical switch on the console. Manual override. "Let me show you what made us win," she said. And the bridge flooded with sound. Recordings. Not commands. Not war cries. Voices, laughter, anger, grief. Children on Earth, screaming at the stars. Mothers burying sons. Soldiers whispering over radios. Teachers, protesters, poets. All of it. Every reason they had fought. Every reason Nemesis existed. And Revenant, created from stolen DNA, trained in silence, built for precision, heard it. And didn't understand. His systems began to fracture. Emotion wasn't a weapon to him. It was noise. And in that noise, he missed the final move. The captain pulled a blade. Not a gun. Not plasma. Just a blade. And she drove it into his chest. Straight through the heart that wasn't really there. He staggered. Looked down. Not at the wound. But at the photo she'd placed on the console beside him. Her and her brother. Smiling. Revenant fell. He didn't scream. He didn't ask why. Because deep down, some part of him finally realized he wasn't built to win. He was built to remind them why they fought. Later, as Nemesis drifted in quiet orbit above the dead sector, the crew gathered what was left. The engineer, bruised and limping, helped reroute life support. The pilot cleaned blood from the consoles. The weapons officer, his knuckles broken, sat quietly and reloaded the revolver. The captain stood alone. Again, the AI broke the silence. Revenant's body has been disintegrated. No signal remains. "Good," she said. "Shall I erase his code from memory?" She paused. "No, keep it." "Why?" "So we never forget how close we came." Later that night, the crew sat together. No speeches, no declarations, just silence. Human silence. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because they all knew the Dominion was dead. But the galaxy wasn't fixed. There were still oppressors, still monsters, still tyrants hiding behind protocol and peace. But now they knew. Someone was watching. Nemesis wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a shadow in the dark, a whisper, a warning. And across the galaxy, in cities still rebuilding, on worlds still healing, in refugee camps and rebel strongholds, children told stories under the stars. Of the day a single human ship brought an empire to its knees. Of the black silhouette that hunted those who ruled with cruelty. Of the voice that said, "We remember what you buried," and they called it not by name, but by fate, Nemesis.